The golden sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the dusty streets of Silver Creek in crimson and amber as Bethany Miller stumbled toward the general store with trembling hands. Her wedding band, the last reminder of a life long gone, clutched tightly between her fingers. The year was 1879, and survival in the unforgiving West had taught her that sentiment was a luxury she could no longer afford. The drought of 1879 had stretched across the plains of Colorado Territory like a plague, withering crops and hope with equal cruelty. 3 months earlier, Bethany had buried her husband Jonathan after a bank robbery gone wrong left him bleeding out in her arms. Now, with their modest homestead failing and her pantry empty, she had made the arduous journey into town with only one tradable item left. Bethany pushed open the weathered door of Miller's General Store, no relation to her married name, the little brass bell above announcing her arrival. The shopkeeper, a portly man with spectacles perched on his bulbous nose, barely looked up from his ledger. She had been here before, begging for credit that had long since run dry. "Mr. Porter," she said, her voice soft but determined, "I've come to make a trade." "Mrs. Miller," Porter replied with a sigh, "I've told you before I cannot extend any more credit. Times are hard for everyone." "No credit," she said, stepping forward and placing her wedding band on the counter. The gold caught the lamplight, glinting accusingly at her. "I need food, flour, beans, whatever this will buy." Porter's eyes widened slightly as he examined the ring. "This is a fine piece, Mrs. Miller, but I'm not in the business of how much," she interrupted, fighting back tears. "How much food will it buy?" A voice from behind her cut through the tension like a knife. "Put it back on if you want to." Bethany turned to see a tall figure silhouetted in the doorway. As he stepped into the light, she could make out a weather-beaten face beneath the brim of a dusty Stetson. His eyes, deep blue like a mountain lake, regarded her with an intensity that made her straighten her spine defensively. "I beg your pardon," she asked. The cowboy moved closer, spurs jingling softly with each step. "That ring, put it back on your finger where it belongs." "My husband is dead," Bethany replied coldly, "and I cannot eat gold." The stranger nodded to Porter. "Give the lady what she needs. Put it on my account." Porter hesitated. "Mr. Hayes, your credit is all ready." "Did I stutter, Porter?" The cowboy Hayes fixed the shopkeeper with a steely gaze. "No, sir, very well." Porter hurried to gather supplies. Bethany stared at the stranger, suspicion warring with desperate gratitude. "I don't accept charity, Mr. Hayes." "Hunter Hayes," he corrected, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "And it's not charity, it's an advance." "An advance on what, exactly?" "I need a cook at my ranch. Lost mine to typhoid last month. Pay is fair, lodging included." He gestured to her ring. "And you get to keep that where it belongs." Bethany scooped the wedding band from the counter and clutched it protectively. "Why would you help a stranger?" Hunter's expression softened slightly. "Because I've seen too many good people lose everything in this God-forsaken territory." "Because my ma raised me better. Take your pick." Porter returned with a sack of supplies: flour, beans, salt pork, coffee, and other essentials, far more than her ring would have purchased. "I don't know you, Mr. Hayes," Bethany said, eyeing the supplies with both longing and suspicion. "No, madam, you don't, but you know starvation, and that's worse company than I'll ever be." He replaced his hat. "My ranch is 3 miles north of town, Double H Ranch. Job's there if you want it. If not, consider the food alone to be repaid when your fortunes improve." With that, he tipped his hat and left as abruptly as he'd arrived, the bell above the door marking his exit. Bethany stood frozen, the ring warm in her palm. "If I were you," Porter said quietly, "I'd take him up on it. Hayes is a hard man, but fair. And that homestead of yours won't yield anything in this drought." Bethany slipped the ring back onto her finger where it hung loose around her too thin digit. "What do you know about him?" "Came here about 3 years ago. Bought the old Henderson place. Keeps to himself mostly, but pays his debts and treats his men right." Porter leaned closer. "Lost his wife in a Comanche raid back in Texas, from what I hear. Never remarried." Bethany nodded slowly, gathering the supplies. "Thank you, Mr. Porter." The shopkeeper smiled kindly. "And Mrs. Miller, he's right about one thing. That ring does belong on your finger." The journey back to her homestead was easier with food in her saddlebags, but Bethany's mind was troubled. The Double H Ranch. She had passed it once or twice, a sprawling property with good water access from the creek that had run dry on her own land months ago. Hunter Hayes was offering her salvation, but at what cost? Men in these parts often had expectations of widows, especially desperate ones. Yet something in his eyes had seemed sincere. Not pity exactly, but understanding. Like he recognized the pain she carried. By the time she reached her cabin, night had fallen completely. The modest structure looked even more forlorn in the moonlight, a failing dream that had once held so much promise when she and Jonathan had claimed it 2 years prior. Inside, the emptiness echoed around her as she lit a lamp and unpacked the supplies. She slept better that night than she had in months, with a full stomach and the weight of her wedding band back on her finger. But by morning, reality had returned with the rising sun. Her homestead was dying. She had no crops, no livestock save for her mare, and now she was indebted to a stranger. The decision, when it came, felt inevitable. Bethany packed her meager possessions, clothes, a few books, her husband's pocket watch, and the photograph of their wedding day. She took one last look at the cabin that had been her home, closed the door without locking it, and mounted her mare. The Double H Ranch appeared on the horizon after an hour's ride. It was larger than she remembered, a main house of solid construction, a bunkhouse for the hands, stables, corrals, and various outbuildings. A stream cut through the property, explaining its resilience during the drought. As Bethany approached, a ranch hand spotted her and called out. Moments later, Hunter Hayes emerged from the main house, squinting against the morning sun. "Mrs. Miller," he said as she reined in her mare, "you decided to take the job after all." "I'm here to discuss terms," she replied, still mounted. "I won't be beholden to anyone, Mr. Hayes." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Wouldn't expect you to be. Shall we talk inside?" He helped her dismount, his hands strong but respectful at her waist. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, a man who'd spent his life squinting into the sun and distance. His face was handsome in a rugged way, tanned and weathered, with a strong jaw partially hidden beneath a short beard speckled with gray. The main house was spacious but Spartan. Functional furniture, few decorations. A home built for practicality rather than comfort. "Coffee," he offered, leading her to a kitchen that was clean but clearly lacking a woman's touch. "Please." As he prepared it, Bethany assessed the kitchen, outdated equipment, disorganized storage, but the essentials were there. "Your terms, Mr. Hayes. What exactly would be expected of me?" Hunter placed a steaming cup before her. "3 meals a day for myself and the hands, 5 men currently. Keeping the house in order, laundry once a week." He leaned against the counter. "In return, you get room and board, $10 a month, and Sundays off unless we're in the middle of a cattle drive or roundup. And where would I sleep? There's a room off the kitchen, small but private. Lock on the door." His eyes met hers directly. "If you're concerned about propriety, Mrs. Miller, you should know I don't mix business with pleasure. You'll be treated with respect in this house." Bethany sipped her coffee, considering the offer was fair, better than fair in these hard times. "I'll need to visit my homestead occasionally to check on things. You'll have use of a horse when needed. And the advance you gave me yesterday, first month's pay as far as I'm concerned, clean slate." Bethany nodded slowly. "Very well, Mr. Hayes, I accept your offer." "Hunter," he corrected. "If we're to share a roof, might as well use my given name." "Bethany," she offered in return, though the familiarity felt strange on her tongue. He showed her to her room, indeed small but clean, with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a small window overlooking the corral. It was more than she had expected. "I'll let you get settled," he said. "Supper's usually at 6. The men eat in the bunkhouse except Sundays, when we take the main meal together here." Alone in her new quarters, Bethany sat on the bed and twisted her wedding band. Jonathan would understand, wouldn't he? This wasn't abandoning their dream, it was surviving to build a new one. That evening, she prepared a simple but hearty meal of beef stew and biscuits. The kitchen was better stocked than she had initially thought, and cooking for others again gave her a sense of purpose she had been missing. Hunter ate quietly, complimenting the food with a nod and a murmured, "Much obliged." After dinner, he retreated to his study while Bethany cleaned up. Days passed into weeks as spring edged toward summer. Bethany fell into the rhythm of ranch life, rising before dawn to prepare breakfast, tending to the house during the day, and preparing the evening meals. The work was hard but satisfying, and the men were respectful, if sometimes awkward around a woman after months without feminine company. Hunter remained something of a mystery. He worked from sunrise to sunset, often returning covered in dust and sweat. He spoke little during meals, but Bethany sometimes caught him watching her when he thought she wouldn't notice. Not in a predatory way, but with something like curiosity or perhaps recognition. One evening in late May, as Bethany was hanging laundry, she heard the distant rumble of thunder. Looking up, she saw dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The ranch hands were moving with increased urgency, securing equipment and livestock. Hunter approached, his expression concerned. "Storm's coming. Might be the break in the drought we've been praying for, or it might be trouble. Best finish up here and get inside." "My mare already in the stable with the others, I saw to it." The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught her by surprise. "Thank you." As she finished with the laundry, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain, a smell so longed for that it made her heart ache. By the time she retreated to the house, fat drops were beginning to fall. Hunter was in the kitchen, lighting extra lamps. "Might lose the light if the storm hits hard," he explained. The rain came suddenly and violently, sheets of water cascading from the heavens as if some divine dam had broken. Lightning cracked the sky, thunder shaking the very foundations of the house. "The men," Bethany asked, concerned, "safe in the bunkhouse, they know the drill." Hunter moved to the window, watching the deluge. "Been a long time since we've seen rain like this. Do you think it will help?" "With the drought," he glanced at her, "if it doesn't wash everything away first." As if in answer, a tremendous crack split the air, louder than any thunder. Both of them rushed to the window to see one of the large cottonwoods near the stream had been struck by lightning and was now ablaze despite the rain. "Damn it," Hunter cursed, already moving toward the door. "If that spreads to the stable, I'm coming with you," Bethany said, grabbing a coat. Outside, the rain was blinding, the wind whipping it into their faces like needles. The ranch hands were already racing from the bunkhouse toward the burning tree, which was perilously close to the stable. The horses inside were whinnying in terror. Bethany followed Hunter to the well, where they began forming a bucket brigade with the men. The rain helped, but the lightning had ignited the old tree so thoroughly that water seemed to make little difference. "The horses," Hunter shouted over the storm. "We need to get them out." Bethany didn't hesitate. She raced toward the stable alongside Hunter, the heat of the fire growing more intense as they approached. Inside, the horses were panicking, kicking at their stalls. "Start with the far end," Hunter directed, already working to calm his own stallion. Bethany moved down the row, opening stalls and leading horses out one by one. The smoke was getting thicker, making it hard to breathe. She reached her mare, who was wild-eyed with terror. "Easy, girl," she soothed, working quickly to lead her out. They had almost cleared the stable when a burning branch crashed through the roof, landing directly in their path. Bethany's mare reared in panic, nearly trampling her. Hunter appeared suddenly, grabbing the reins with one hand and Bethany's arm with the other, pulling them both around the flaming obstacle and toward the door. They emerged into the rain-soaked night, coughing and gasping. The ranch hands had managed to contain the fire to the tree and a small section of the stable roof. The danger was passing. Hunter didn't release her arm immediately. "Are you hurt?" Bethany shook her head, rain streaming down her face. "No, thank you." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary before he turned to help the men with the remaining horses. Later, soaked to the bone and exhausted, they gathered in the kitchen. Hunter insisted on making coffee himself while Bethany wrapped herself in a blanket, her wet hair plastered to her face. "You handled yourself well out there," Hunter said as he handed her a steaming mug. "Most city women would have stayed inside." "I'm not most women," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "And I haven't been a city woman for a long time." "No," he agreed, his eyes appraising her with new respect. "I suppose you haven't." Something shifted between them that night, a mutual recognition of capability, of resilience. The next morning, though the storm had passed, leaving puddles and fallen branches in its wake, Bethany felt a strange sense of renewal. The drought began to ease after that. The land slowly returned to life, creeks filling, grass growing, wildflowers dotting the hills with color. Bethany visited her homestead and found it too benefiting from the rain, though it was too late to plant a full crop. You could sell it, Hunter suggested one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. These quiet moments had become more frequent between them, comfortable silences occasionally broken by conversation. "I'm not ready," Bethany admitted, twisting her wedding band. "It was our dream," Hunter nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Dreams change doesn't mean you forget the old ones." "Is that what happened to you? Your dreams changed?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "My dream died with my wife," he finally said. "What I have now is purpose. It's enough." "Is it?" Their eyes met, and for the first time, Bethany saw loneliness there that matched her own. "Most days," he answered honestly. "Summer progressed, bringing with it cattle drives and the constant work of maintaining the ranch." Bethany found herself increasingly involved in its operations, her role expanding beyond cooking and cleaning. Hunter sought her opinion on matters, taught her about the cattle business, even showed her how to manage the account books. "In case something happens to me," he explained. Someone should know how to keep things running. The implication that he trusted her with his livelihood wasn't lost on Bethany. On a sweltering July afternoon, Bethany was picking vegetables from the small garden she had started when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Looking up, she saw Hunter returning with several of the hands, earlier than expected from their ride to check the northern pastures. Something was wrong. Hunter was slumped in his saddle, one of the hands riding close beside him as if to prevent him from falling. Bethany dropped her basket and ran to meet them. "What happened?" "Rattlesnake spooked his horse," explained Lee, the oldest of the ranch hands. "Threw him hard against some rocks, might have cracked some ribs." Hunter grimaced as they helped him dismount. "I'm fine, just need to catch my breath." "You're not fine," Bethany countered, noting the way he clutched his side and the pallor beneath his tan. "Get him inside," she directed the men. Once in the house, she took charge, ordering hot water and clean cloths. Hunter tried to protest as she helped him to his bedroom, but a sharp intake of breath betrayed his pain. "Shirt off," she instructed once the men had left them alone. "Mrs. Miller," he began formally. "That's hardly Bethany," she corrected, "and don't be ridiculous. I need to see how bad it is." Reluctantly, he allowed her to help him remove his shirt, revealing a torso already mottling with bruises along his right side. Bethany inhaled sharply at the sight. "I've had worse," Hunter said, attempting a smile that turned into a wince. "That doesn't make me feel better." She gently probed the area, noting when he flinched. "You're lucky nothing's broken, but these bruises are serious. You need to rest." "Can't. The summer roundup will happen without you if necessary." Bethany's tone brooked no argument. "The men know what to do. You've trained them well." For once, Hunter didn't have a retort. Perhaps it was the pain, or perhaps it was the unfamiliar experience of someone caring for him, but he allowed Bethany to clean the abrasions and bind his ribs with strips of cloth. "Thank you," he said quietly when she finished. Bethany met his eyes. "You've done the same for me in different ways." For the next few days, Hunter was confined to the house on Bethany's orders. He made a poor patient restless and irritable, but she remained firm. She brought him reports from the hands, read to him from the newspaper, and ensured he rested. On the third evening, as Bethany brought him supper on a tray, she found him examining a photograph she hadn't seen before. "Your wife?" she asked gently. Hunter nodded, turning the frame so she could see. A beautiful woman with dark hair smiled back, frozen in time. "Margaret, Maggie, taken a month before the raid." Bethany set down the tray and sat beside him on the edge of the bed. She was lovely. She was everything. His voice was rough with emotion. "We were married barely a year." "I'm sorry." Bethany's hand found his, offering comfort without words. Hunter's fingers closed around hers. "How long were you and your husband together?" 3 years. He was killed in a bank robbery. Wrong place, wrong time. The memory still ached, but differently now, like an old wound that had finally begun to heal properly. "Jonathan was kind, gentle. He believed we could build something here." And now, Bethany looked down at their joined hands, at her wedding band catching the lamplight. Now I think perhaps he was right, just not in the way either of us imagined. Hunter's gaze was intense, questioning. Bethany. A knock at the door interrupted whatever he had been about to say. Illy entered with news of a fence breach on the eastern boundary, and the moment passed. But something had changed. Again, by August, Hunter had recovered fully, throwing himself back into ranch work with renewed vigor. The summer roundup went smoothly, and the ranch was prospering despite the lingering effects of the drought. Bethany found herself increasingly torn. Her role at the Double H had evolved into something more than employee. She was Hunter's confidante, his partner in many ways. The hands looked to her with respect, and she had grown fond of the ranch and its rhythms. Yet her wedding band remained on her finger, a constant reminder of what she had lost and the promises she had made. One evening, as summer began its slow transition to fall, Bethany rode out to her homestead alone. The cabin stood as she had left it, but now wild grasses grew around it, reclaiming the yard. Inside, dust had settled over everything, but it remained as she remembered the home she had shared with Jonathan. She sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset paint the plains in gold and purple. For the first time, she removed her wedding band, holding it in her palm and feeling its weight. "I loved you," she whispered to Jonathan's memory. "I will always love you, but I think it's time to let our dream go." The decision brought both pain and relief. She slipped the ring back on, not yet ready to relinquish it entirely, and returned to the Double H with a lighter heart. Hunter was waiting on the porch when she arrived, his expression a mixture of concern and something deeper. "I was beginning to worry," he said as he helped her dismount. "I needed to think," she replied simply. He nodded, understanding without explanation. "And did you think?" "Yes." Bethany met his gaze steadily. "I've decided to sell my homestead." Surprise flickered across Hunter's face, followed by a carefully neutral expression. "Are you sure?" "It's your land, your home." "It was a home," she corrected gently. "Now it's just a place that holds memories." Hunter's eyes searched hers. "And what will you do after you sell it?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. "That depends," Bethany said, her heart pounding, "on whether there's still a place for me here." Hunter took a step closer. "There will always be a place for you here, Bethany, always." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Bethany felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope, possibility, the stirrings of new love. "Hunter," she began, but he shook his head. "Not yet," he said softly. "When you're ready, when you're truly ready." She understood what he meant. The wedding band still on her finger. The final step she hadn't yet taken. Fall arrived, bringing with it cooler temperatures and the preparations for winter. Bethany sold her homestead to a young couple from back east, seeing in them echoes of herself and Jonathan, full of dreams and determination. She used part of the money to buy cattle of her own, which Hunter agreed to add to his herd with the profits to be shared. A business partnership. He called it with a smile that suggested he hoped for more. On a crisp October morning, Bethany rose early and walked to the small rise behind the main house. The ranch spread out before her, peaceful in the dawn light, cattle grazing in the distance, smoke rising from the bunkhouse chimney, the stable where she and Hunter had faced fire together. She removed her wedding band one final time, pressed it to her lips in a silent goodbye, and then carefully wrapped it in a handkerchief. She wouldn't sell it or give it away. Some things were too precious for that, but she would keep it as a memory, not as a chain. When she returned to the house, Hunter was in the kitchen, awkwardly attempting to make coffee. "Need some help?" she asked, smiling at his obvious relief when she took over. As she worked, he leaned against the counter, watching her with that same intense gaze that had first captured her attention in Porter's store. "Your hand," he said quietly, noticing the bare finger where her ring had been. Bethany met his eyes steadily. "I'm ready now." Hunter moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Bethany Miller, from the moment you stood in that store, ready to trade your wedding band for food, I knew you were a woman of extraordinary courage and heart. I never expected to find love again after Maggie, but life has a way of surprising us." "Yes, it does," Bethany agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "When Jonathan died, I thought my heart died with him, but you showed me that it's possible to honor the past without being bound by it." Hunter's hands tightened around hers. I'm not asking you to forget him. Just as I'll never forget Maggie, but I believe they would want us to find happiness again. I believe that too. Bethany felt tears pricking her eyes, but they were healing tears, not ones of grief. Hunter leaned forward, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that spoke of patience rewarded, of new beginnings forged from the ashes of loss. When they parted, his smile was tender. The hands have been betting on when this would happen, he confessed with a low chuckle. Illy's going to be insufferable. Bethany laughed, the sound light and free. Let them talk, we've earned this. As the sun rose fully over the Double H Ranch, Bethany realized that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't written from scratch, but are pieced together from fragments of broken hearts that find each other when they're most needed. The wedding band she had once been willing to trade for mere survival had instead led her to a different kind of sustenance, one that fed not just the body, but the soul. And Hunter Hayes, the cowboy who had told her to put it back on, had given her the time and space to do exactly that until she was ready to take it off on her own terms and reach for a new future with open hands and an open heart.